in Hillary's opening prayer, she mentioned something about to help us figure out what we want to do. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Who knows, raise of hands, who knows, has a pretty clear idea of what they want to do with their career? Raise them high, raise them high. Pretty good idea, okay? Keep them up. Who had that pretty good idea when they first entered BYU? High school. Okay, so you got that sometime in high school. Okay, what do you want to do?
Construction law.
Great. What kind?
I'm studying political science and architecture.
Fantastic. Okay, what do you want? What's your clear idea?
I want to get a doctorate in public health.
Fantastic.
That's
And you?
Very recent.
That's fine. And you?
International business, probably starting in Beijing, go back, get an MBA, and work overseas.
Great, great. Well, I envy all of you. My father, أهلا وسهلا يا أستاذ كيرك. مرحبا بك. I've had a lot of conversations with my father because I was always a little bit jealous of him because he knew from day one what he wanted to do. He's a physician, retired now, but he knew exactly what he wanted to do even probably in grade school. And to the point where at the time when you could do this, he came to BYU, just took his pre-med, didn't graduate, took his MCAT and was accepted into med school without a degree. That's how focused he was. And so we often have talks because he just doesn't understand this idea of, well, I'm not sure exactly what I want to do or things like that. But what I'm going to try and leave, I like to have leave most of this to Q&A because that's where the really good stuff gets. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I know that last week's presentation, we're talking about some of the things that I did while I was at BYU and how I got to where I am. And it's kind of amazing because hindsight is 20/20. You have a lot clearer view of how you got here when you start piecing the things those individual steps along the way. And then you can also kind of see a little bit clearer about what types of steps might be the right ones in the future, just incrementally. So, whoops, wrong way. Whoa, okay. So I grew up in Idaho, and I am still an Idaho boy through and through, although I live now, whoops, okay. There's where I started. I'm now in DC. And here's going to be our next little quiz. With USAID and with the field studies and things like that, I've had one of the total perks about working in the field of development is travel. And so, who can tell me that country? Where is it? What city? Cairo. Where's my bag? Okay. Who was it? Who was first? Hillary. Oops. Okay. Good. Next. Where's that? No. What? It's Bishkek is close. It's in the big brown country. Kazakhstan. What's the city? You know?
I could think of it if I wasn't under pressure to answer.
Almaty or Almaty. It's no longer the capital. They've moved it. Next one. Where's that? Cambodia. Who said it first?
Somebody back there.
Was it you? Oh, all the way to the back. Bad throw, sorry. Oh, God, I keep going the wrong way. Okay, that one? Ivory Coast, great. Lots of people screw up and get Ghana or something. Okay, just a couple more. You guys are winning. Where was it? You guys are winning, proving that American geography is alive and well. Next one. Yemen.
Oh, Yemen.
You think you got it first? You can figure out. Whoops. And the final one.
Mali. No.
I heard it. No, I heard something first. Zambia. Even Dave Schuller gets good breath. Okay. Oh, restart now? Do we want to hit that? those are some of the countries that I've been, which is really cool. My passport, I'd love to keep them. But international development, you get a lot of exposure. But the neat thing is beyond the travel is to see all the different contexts and the cultural context, the political context, everything that kind of goes along with it. What I want to do, again, take advantage of every opportunity that you get. As I look back, I went to high school in Idaho Falls, Idaho. I was an exchange student to Germany for a summer. And that's kind of where it started. Actually, probably started even younger than that, the interest abroad. I took German in high school, and then I came to BYU. Immediately jumped into the Arabic program because I loved that. Missions and Peace Corps. Has anyone ever considered Peace Corps? Any Peace Corps volunteer alumni here? Okay. Missions and Peace Corps, take all the opportunities that you get. And field study. Who's actually on, who has been on a field study? Fantastic. Who is planning on going? Great. Take advantage of these opportunities. Look for opportunities to volunteer or work or things like that. Each of these little things along the way has shaped what I've done. And it's oftentimes just things that you're not really, you're in tune to. You know, when we talk, because we're at BYU, we can talk about these things. When you think about the Spirit and listening and things like that, it's that whole analogy of being tuned into the right station so that when the Spirit is speaking that you can hear it and recognize it. It's the same thing, I think, with what we're trying to do with our careers, and especially when we are in tune to kind of the general direction of where we want to go, and we look at our past and our experiences that we have. And so when the new opportunities come, we can recognize which ones are really the ones that we should latch onto. But take advantage of all these things. One of those opportunities was in 1992 when I was actually, let me get to my notes here now. At the time, you know, Dave said that I was an anthropology major. Well, at the time I heard about this India field study going on, I was not an anthropology major. I was one of these guys walking around, what am I going to do with my life? And I just got back from my mission to Germany, and this was my first semester back, and I thought I was knocking out some general ed classes, so I took Anthro 101, and it was from Bonfort. Is he still here? Okay. And I took that class, and, you know, like so many things, I sat next to a really cute girl. And she was telling me about a class, or one of her friends that knew someone named Dave Schuler, who was looking for people to go to India. And I thought, hey, that sounds like a plan. So I kind of befriended her and then met Dave, and wasn't yet decided, but she said something that, yeah, but they're only accepting anthropology majors. And I said, well, I'm having fun. I really like this anthropology thing, so maybe I'll start going down that lane. Well, I remember meeting Dave, and in a few months later, when he was recalling his first experience meeting me, I was actually teaching at the MTC at the time. Didn't have my beard card back then. And very clean cut. I'd just come back from the MTC that morning to meet with Dave, so I was in my white shirt and tie. And Dave was telling me in hindsight, he said, I saw this kid, and I was thinking, no way can he handle India. He's such a pretty boy. He's such a clean-cut kid, and I'm glad he gave me the shot. But so we met, and we struck up a good friendship professionally as well as personally, and had kind of progressed to there. So it was August of 1993 that I went to India, and it was an interesting experience because Dave was just starting to work, kind of open up this program, and as he mentioned, there was a group of about 5 or 6 students that went over during that summer for a few weeks. I was unable to go, so I joined on the tail end, and we crossed for probably about 2 or 3 days was all. That was my introduction to getting settled and everything, and they left and I was there. And the reason I was so tired is that not only did I fly into Calcutta and spend a couple days there getting ready, I took the train down from Calcutta to Chennai and then over to Coimbatore, which was a 2-day straight train ride. But between Chennai and Coimbatore, the train in front of us derailed, and so we had to take buses, and luckily it was who you meet along the way, the opportunities. I met two young guys that chatted me up, and they were able to help me get all the way in. That's why I was really tired. Nonetheless, Dave had talked to me about starting up this program because of, again, hindsight. It was a perfect, I thought it was a perfect match. Here I was an anthropology student, and by the time I did go to India, I'd taken a bunch of courses on qualitative research and just all sorts of anthro courses. Not to mention just the standard India course to get an idea of what I was going into. But I had been teaching at the MTC ESL, English as a Second Language, and Dave wanted to start some way of reciprocation of me being in this village and teaching starting to teach an English class. And so being an anthro major on one hand and having a little bit of experience with teaching English was a perfect match. So I went out there, and I did not at the time have a good, clear idea of what I wanted my research focus. And that was the kind of the downside. However, I did latch onto certain opportunities. My focus ended up, I remember the title of it was The Year of No Failure, because in the English system, the curriculum of that year in the primary schools was the government had set out 1993, the Year of No Failure. And so I talked about some of I met with a lot of the faculty and administration of some of the local education leaders. I met with a lot of religious leaders to talk about education. I did some kind of general anthropology, fun, romantic field studies just about religion, politics, and just family kinships and things like that. One of the fun things that he mentioned is I'm a guitarist, and so I immediately latched onto music out there, kind of the ethnomusicology stuff, and picked up the instrument and kind of fused this all together. But this was my first experience really kind of getting my own feet wet and standing up on my own feet in this field. So I owe a lot of it to the center, to Dave, to the professors that I worked with. And yes, while I was out there, I even, because I didn't want to get caught behind in my Arabic studies, I took all my coursework by, completely independent, and a few faxes here and there at the time. Email was not too effective back then. But it really did change my life for good. And at the time, I was actually spent most of my time in the village of Chavati, which is in Tamil Nadu, southern India. And then I would bounce back and forth between another village, Semmedu, which was about an hour bus ride away. And Semmedu they had a river. It was beautiful, lush, and green. Chavati was beautiful. It didn't have the river, but there's Daniel Appa there before passing away. But anyway, so the field study was really kind of my first experience. I remember writing in my journal. I was going to bring it because it's a hardbound thing that I wrote in every day out there, and I've kept it, but it's kept up in the attic right now in the box. But I remember thinking this was my first time really traveling by myself that far away, halfway around the world, and it was kind of a coming of age, rite of passage for me. Whoops, wrong direction. Now this is something that I would be really fascinated if anyone has any pictures of these kids now. This is my English class. This is Merci, and I was just going the other night. I couldn't find my journal, but the names came through, and I was like, oh my gosh, these kids are anywhere from usually around 7 to 10 or 12, and so they're in 25 some odd years old now. Merci, Mary Dhanalakshmi, Lada, Raja, can't remember, Punida Mary, Jessila, and Joseph, or no, Livisi Paul. I think that's Jumbo in the back. He never quite was interested, but so these kids have a place in my heart. But this is I'd teach them English pretty much every evening, and it definitely gets frustrating. The education system in many of these countries is very much based on rote knowledge, and they just hear what the teacher says and they repeat it, and they don't really get a whole lot. So one of the biggest rewards I remember when Raja, right there, he just could not get it. But the week that I was packing up to go, they'd always come by and say, "Good morning, teacher. Good morning, teacher," and regardless of what time, hour of the day. The best reward that I had was one evening I was walking by and he said, "Good morning, teacher." "Good evening, teacher." And I thought, oh my gosh, it's been worth it, the 5 months. The 5 months. No, I mean, that was a pretty emotional day. But it's one. We were just meeting Jan Van Orman shortly before, and he asked me what would I advise people who are interested in going into development. And number one is get your hands dirty. Figure out what it's like at the grassroots level. Right now, I'm at headquarters. I'm in the bureaucracies of it all. I do get out to see the field relatively frequently, but you've got to know what's happening on the ground, and this is where it starts. These field programs are fantastic for that. After which, I graduated in 1995, and while I was here at BYU, through the help of our fantastic Arabic program, I was able to get a scholarship to study a summer in Morocco and then another summer in the American University in Cairo for my Arabic. After that, I graduated in 95, and I was figuring out still what did I want to do with my life. I had this eclectic, useless degree called anthropology. It was a great pre-professional degree. And I thought, what could I do with that? And my final years, I'd actually been writing a couple of papers on culture and medicine and medical anthropology. And John Hawkins, who was the chair at the time, gave me some development money that he had for, I guess, teaching development, and allowed me to teach an introductory course on medical anthropology at the time that they hadn't done yet. And that was fun. But at that same time, I was applying for graduate schools, figured out, well, I can take this anthropology and a culture perspective and medicine, and so I figured international health, international public health. So I started applying to programs, graduate programs, and at the same time, I applied to a Fulbright. And to my surprise, it really was to my surprise, I was awarded a Fulbright to go to Morocco for a year. And I did some research on the intersection of traditional medicine and modern medicine in Marrakesh in an urban center. I mean, you'd hear a lot about traditional medicine out in the sticks, but traditional medicine permeates the society. So that was yet another one of these romantic things. I was out there by myself. I wasn't affiliated with an institution, which was a pro and a con. But was able to put together some information that I actually used later on after returning from my Fulbright. I actually had applied then at the time. I never thought I had a chance at Harvard, honestly. I did, and I had studied hard in school, but I didn't think that my 3.5 average would get me into Harvard. Honestly, I did not. But at the time, I thought, well, I've got a Fulbright under my belt, so I'll apply now, because I had applied to some other schools. And lo and behold, I got in, and that was an amazing experience. But what I wanted to highlight here is that, especially in these development-focused degrees, international relations, international business, international public health, you do have to have some solid scores. They don't want to take in dropouts or anything like that. But really what they look at is your practical experience. Where have you been? Do you speak languages? Do you have some experience on the ground out there in these areas? And I fortunately enough had some of these experiences. And also the other thing that I mentioned to Jen, other than the getting your hands dirty in development or in international work, is it's all about networking, folks. It really is. And I'm here to introduce myself and to talk with you, but I'm more than happy to provide any opportunities, put you in touch with any people that I might be able to, because it's all about networking. And it was networking that actually, I think, got me into Harvard. One of our professors here, Donnelly Bowen, in the political science, she's a Middle East specialist in political science and anthropology. She knew one of the professors out in Harvard School of Public Health because they both worked in Morocco. I got in touch with this woman. We figured out that her interests in Morocco anthropology were very similar in mine. We struck up this relationship, and I think it was that pull that got me into it. So get your experience, get your hands dirty, and use networks wherever you can. Because even after Harvard, so I'm going to go by so we just to this point. Even with what they call the H-bomb, the Harvard degree, I thought, okay, I've got an H-bomb on my resume, and but it took me a long time to find a job. It did, because I hadn't networked well enough in my graduate program. At the same time, I have to let you know that I was really kind of pursuing my other interest, which is now my night job as a musician. And Harvard's known for, or Boston in some is kind of known for its live music scene. And so I was having fun. When I wasn't in class, I'd be playing in Harvard Square for tips and getting gigs at pubs and things like that. But after I was done with my degree program, I met my wife in our singles ward out there in Cambridge, and we started dating. And she was just finishing up her final year of her graduate program in public relations, and so I just kind of took the year off, and it was musician full time to pay my rent. And hindsight, it was a great decision. Hindsight, it was also a little rough because I had this big blank year on my resume. And we got engaged, moved down to D.C. together where her parents were. We got married down in D.C. She immediately got work. Took her about 2 months to find a job. Took me 8 months of pounding the pavement, sending out the resumes, and getting the little thank you for playing cards. We found someone else, but your resume is fantastic. But it was networking. And again, that got me into USAID. Does everyone know USAID, what it stands for? Anyone? Agency for International Development. It works great for our acronym. Yeah, الهيئة الأمريكية للتنمية الدولية. The USAID is a huge agency. It's all your hard-earned tax dollars at work for development. My brother had interned there years ago. And moved on. But I thought, well, this is an opportunity. I had networked with an NGO, small NGO that was out in D.C. that was actually run by a former professor here at BYU. And I had connections with that, and they had just won a contract with the Bureau for Global Health at USAID, and to work in West Bank, Gaza. And perfect. Here I was. I just had my master's in public health. I'm an Arabic speaker. I've had experience. I did the Jerusalem program back in 1990, so I know the region. But it was during the second Intifada, and the contract was stalled, and so I'd call back, and they'd say, "Well, we want you, but nothing's happening yet." And so it was just this constant waiting game. But at the end of the day, they also this NGO. Also had a contract with the Bureau for Global Health as a support contract, kind of admin assistance, and what they called program assistant, which was a little bit higher level. And they said, well, most of these positions are for people who are straight out of graduate or college, and they come here, get a few years of experience, and then they go on to a graduate degree. You're kind of higher than that. I don't know if you want to take this, but here's an opportunity. And so I did, and perfect. It was the foot in the door that I needed. And to the point where I've now been with the agency for 7 years. And I've worked in various different positions. I started as a policy analyst. So I've spent a couple of years looking at the legislation that comes from the Hill to development and doing analysis of the earmarks that we get. And, everyone's got on the Hill has their pet projects or pet countries or lobbyists that convince them that we need to buy wheelchairs for people in Zambia where there are no decent roads for a wheelchair, but someone's got a lot of wheelchairs that they want to give away. There's a lot of crazy things happening out there, but there's a lot of really good things. Can anyone guesstimate how much of our the U.S. budget goes to development? Percentage? Hillary, what do you think? 0.07. Did you read something?
Yeah.
That has greatly increased over the last little while. The reason it's increased is because of the Presidential Malaria Initiative, what we lovingly call PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. $15 billion over the first 5 years. Now it's been up to $30 billion over the next 5. The President's Malaria Initiative, PMI, which is really focusing on a few target countries, which is another chunk of billions of dollars. Before those initiatives really came into play, less than 0.1%. It's pretty depressing. We always like to pat ourselves on the back saying, well, dollar for dollar, we give more than any other country, any other donor out there. America gives more money than any other donor. Well, sure, but it was less than 0.1%. I haven't seen the recent figures, but 0.7% sounds pretty close, because there's a few other big initiatives that have happened. Why do you think the development has kind of come on board now? Why do you think this big increase over the last few years? What kind? What do you think? What do you mean?
Like maybe we want to like reach out to other countries.
Sure, yeah.
Well, the same thing, increase United States public image, especially since the war in Iraq.
Absolutely. That's the key thing. What's been happening with, and I'm gonna close up here so we have some good minutes for. I've already gone longer than I wanted to, so we have some good Q&A. Development has really come on stage over the last few years, really, with the government, with the federal government, because they know that regardless of all the bombs and the guns and the military action out there, that is not prevention. That's dealing with issues that are already there. And how we're going to win this war on terror, whether you agree with it or not, I won't say. But it is something that we have to get out and address the real issues. Why are there people joining these groups and going to militant versions of fanaticism or whatever? It's lack of jobs, it's lack of health care, it's lack of food, it's lack of education. And some people are starting to realize this. One of the unfortunate things that have happened, and I'll say unfortunate, is because I'm USAID, is USAID has been sort of an independent technical agency that works on development issues. It's the Agency for International Development. Our boss does report to Condi Rice, the Secretary of State, but recently we've been pulled closer and closer, and there's always been this pendulum swing of how close aid is to state. Well, State Department is the foreign policy and foreign diplomacy arm of the U.S. government, right? Development is what we do in USAID. What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of bringing those two things together, development and diplomacy? I want to hear your ideas with that. Are there some downsides to that? What are the pros? What are the cons? What do you think? Yeah.
I think one potential con would be politicizing development projects and funding.
Do we need the microphone to go around? Sorry, I'm to politicize development. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Well, a pro might be exactly the other side of it, just that the people who are working in diplomacy and knowing which groups, would need a little extra, I don't know, oil to grease the wheel to make things happen, so to speak. Maybe it's good to coin that with development so it can be put in the right place.
Great. Both good comments. One others.
I think a pro is that the diplomacy has teeth with the development. Like development can say, oh yeah, we really do stand by whatever we're saying, type of thing. Like we're giving you aid or whatever, and then it sort of spreads goodwill, that kind of thing.
I think there was one more comment. You had one? Right there.
I just was wondering, kind of the same thing as politicizing is you want to get immediate results, and development doesn't happen.
Good
Well,
answer.
with immediate results doesn't work.
Great answer. That's one of the big debates out there. Politics, foreign policy, and things like that. Often, now, no one in State Department would say that they don't have long-term objectives. They do have long-term objectives. But a lot of what happens in the policy side of things has to address quick political crises. And development is not quick. It's very long-term. And so those are some of the, I'm glad, I'm not going to talk any more about that because we only have 10 or 15 more minutes. But those are the right issues that you're thinking about. And you can figure out, and as you continue to learn about development and what's going on internationally, you can make your own opinions about what's happening. We were being pulled very close to state, to the point of almost being what we felt was obliterated. But there is a tendency now for the pendulum to swing the other way. We've got a new administrator on board, and we'll see what happens. But that is the debate out there: short-term versus long-term, and what is foreign policy and diplomacy versus development, and what are some of the good reasons for bringing that together to really coordinate U.S. government agencies, whether it's, because the Department of Defense does development a little bit. We are the primary U.S. government arm to do development. State Department does it. Department of Health and Human Services, CDC. I mean, there's a lot of players out there. I am going to just leave that almost here, except what have I learned recently is that I have to try and juggle my day job with my other day job. I am a new father, and then my night job, which I enjoy. These are all things that, in hindsight, I see all the different things that have been, the things that I've enjoyed about the experiences that I've had. Why did I enjoy it? Was I being stretched during that experience, or was I just spinning my wheels? What was I passionate about? These are the things that when I look back over my life and I see all these experiences, whether it was at BYU, whether it was before then, whether it was some of my experiences after professionally or even non-professionally, these are kind of the things that I'm looking at. And I'm thinking, well, what does this mean for, what does this mean for me in the future? What is my next move? I've actually been looking around. Maybe my next move is private sector. I've applied to, I had an interview last month with the Gates Foundation, thinking that would be nice. What do I want to do? Where do I want to be doing it? I've been feeling a strong pull to come back to the West. DC is a great city, but it's very political. It's very white collar. It's very stressful at times. People dropping their resumes right and left. With whom do I want to be working and doing it? That's the reason I'm with the agency right now. Is the people in development are fantastic. They're real people. They're the only real people in DC, if you ask me. And then how do I want to be doing it? I'm still trying to figure out what do I want to do when I grow up. But I'm loving every step of it along the way. And I'll tell you, it was the field study that really kind of kicked this into gear, and it's kept its momentum. The other thing that I'm looking at quite critically right now are, what are my gaps? Where are my gaps, whether it's management skills? If I want to if I ask all these questions and I figure out, oh, this is what I want to do, this is my next move, what are my gaps there? Well, I haven't done much program management. I am very valuable to USAID. I know bureaucracies, I know the policies, I know legislation, I know how we program, but I haven't done any specific project management. And so if I want to do private sector, that's something I may have to start doing a little bit, looking for positions. So look at your gaps. If you know where you want your next jump is, what are the gaps in your resume or in your background that need to be filled? That's the end. I hate always to say the end because there is no ending to any of our stories. Who knows where I'll be? I could be a derelict out on the streets in 5 years from now, hopefully not, for my kids' sake and my wife's sake. But it's a process, and enjoy it. Take all advantages that come here at BYU. This, to me, this building and this program and this center and this group of people that are in this room right now are the people who really take that motto out there at the front. The world is our campus. I believe that very, very, very strongly. And this building in this center keeps that its focus, and I think we all need to remember that. But I'll leave it there, and let's do some, we've got about 10 minutes, I think. I'm here until whenever, but I guess we have the room until 1 o'clock. I know a lot of you have classes, but I'm happy to discuss. I'm going to, there's my promotional. I've got a few copies of this, about 10. It's what is USAID and how do we do what we do? You're welcome to take it. It's kind of a primer. And then I've got some business cards that I do have some contacts. I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with people if you're interested in development, especially in public health, international health. I'm happy to talk with you, share emails, whatever. But
Hi, I was curious. Thanks for coming. I think from the perspective of a lot of the classes I take, we often portray USAID as the ultimate in
Evil.
top-down development. And I was curious, doing some of my research on Mali and education for my upcoming experience. I read about $43 million a year for education, and then boom, it's gone, and fire all the teachers, and the schools collapse. I'm just wondering, what is your perception of the decision-making process? How does something like that happen, and are the right people really being consulted?
the right people are being consulted. It's who's being heard and where are the final decisions being made. I just returned from Georgia and Armenia, and our health officer in Armenia just is new to Armenia. She was actually in Mali, was her prior post. And what's happening very especially now is there's always been this, like I said, this pendulum of whether it's the decisions are being made in the field or out here somewhere in between. Things have been very much pulling back centrally. I see that as unfortunate. There are some issues that they're trying to address with that. One of the things that you have to understand with any U.S. government agency, especially one that's doing what we are doing, of all development issues that are being watched on the Hill, health is one of the key, is probably the highest. We're the best funded. We're the 800-pound gorilla in the room always. And so they are very concerned, and they have earmarks like you wouldn't believe on what we spend and that color of money and how we spend it and the results that we need from it. We get that top down. How we go about doing that is in consultation with our missions, and we work with the ministries of health. So we work with the governments, and we involve all sorts of local NGOs. But it is a manner of the decision making is definitely happening at a more central level. This Presidential AIDS Initiative, PEPFAR, is very centralized, and the pros to that are that we can show the Hill what we are doing with each dollar spent and how that is coordinated, and so that you can roll up what you're doing in one country versus the other country, and you can roll that up into one big number, and you can say, ta-da, give us more money. Our budgets have been cut recently, not the last couple of years, but a few years prior to that, because we've been horrible at telling our story. We haven't been able to roll up our numbers. And because we were doing things, our decisions were being made more at the field level, at the country level. And that's been shifted a little bit so we can better tell our story. There are some pros and cons to that, and it's a tough thing to do. But I feel strongly that the right people are being consulted. It's just where are those final decisions and the constraints that we have to work with that's a tough thing. I was telling Jen, because he has some experience with aid, and I was one of those who, aid gets a lot of criticism, rightfully so. But the reason I'm still there is because the people working in the agency are fantastic. They're very bright, very good technically. They do know the field. We get out there regularly, and we coordinate with our foreign service officers as well as our civil service, and we get lots of great information. But we have to work within a very politicized environment. And so it's a matter of trying to balance what the financials of it and the politics of it with what we know to be technically sound and appropriate. And there are a lot of compromises in the middle. Yeah.
I was just wondering what you do on a daily basis, both in the field when you go traveling and also back in the office.
The field keeps me alive, let me put that first. I'm in the Ronald Reagan building, which is one of the largest federal buildings in the district. And it is Dilbert Hades. If you can imagine cubicle after cubicle after cubicle. Like I said, the people there are fantastic. They're real. These are development people. But what I do on a day-to-day basis is a lot of paperwork, a lot of coordination. As the Asia and Near East coordinator, what that means is I am responsible for really quick, AID is broken up into 4 different regions, and then you have 3 different technical specific bureaus as well. And the Bureau for Global Health is the biggest staff, and that's where I work. I am in charge of keeping abreast of what's going on in all of our countries in the Asia Near East region, just on broad scope, so that I can kind of take that information, synthesize that into the programs and projects that we develop centrally. Most projects that are done by these missions out in the field are field-driven, field-created, their own bilateral agreements within the country. But to provide some management ease and ease up the burden of these missions out in the field having to manage all sorts of projects, they can buy into some of these projects that we develop centrally that are for the global issues. And so these projects that we develop, I'm trying to make sure that they're sensitive to some of the issues that are happening within that region. I just returned from, like I said, the Caucasus for a regional conference that we had out there for all of our health officers to discuss some of the issues and the struggles that they're having. And I take that back to Washington. But my day-to-day job is emails, drafting reports, budgets, negotiations, and a lot of just sitting and typing and responding to emails on the computer. Going out to the field is, like I said, what keeps me alive, because I have a much clearer scope of work when they call me to come out. I usually have a 2-week visit or something, and I know exactly what I need to be doing. I was out in Georgia for 1 week for this conference, and then I spent a week and a half in Yerevan, Armenia. They have a big primary health care reform project that is their first 2 years is finishing, and they're considering funding them for the next 3 years, but they want to know what has been achieved, what is working, what needs to be changed for the next 3 years. So I went out with a team of 3 others to go out and visit sites, visit little tiny clinics out in the middle of nowhere, and visit with the Minister of Health and other NGOs that are involved. So a lot of meetings, a lot of time spending in cars, writing reports, taking pictures, having great meals with the people that you meet after the meetings are over, type of thing. So that's kind of what I do. But I travel maybe 3, maybe 4 times a year for a couple weeks each. So I travel maybe 15%, 20% max.
Sort of a 2-part question here. You talk about your international experiences, and it's intriguing to me that you've chosen to live in Washington, D.C. Has that been frustrating at all? I mean, are there other opportunities within USAID or other jobs in order to live overseas?
Absolutely. I have chosen for a few reasons to live in D.C. I enjoy living there, and I've always been one who's been had a kind of a home base. And I love the opportunity to travel, do things, and then come back. Have we talked about it? My wife is chomping at the bit. She's like, let's go out and live somewhere. I've taken her to Egypt and Morocco, and we've been to Cambodia, and she's like, let's go. The Foreign Service, there's USAID Foreign Service, which is aside from the State Department Foreign Service. It's a different program, different way to enter into the system. We have our own Foreign Service, and if you become a Foreign Service officer within USAID, it's very much like the state. You go to spend 3, 4, max 5 years in a country, and then you get a bid list and you try and figure out where your next post is. I would prefer not to do that. I would prefer to go to a country that I'm very much interested in and stay there as long as I choose to. So there are lots of opportunities to find things. One of the neat opportunities that I thought was going to come up, it was actually right after the war. One of our political appointees, who was a doctor, he was going to be the interim minister of health in Iraq until the government was set up. And being an Arabic speaker, he talked to me and he said, I need a right-hand man. Well, I said, I've got a family at home. And this was right after the operations had ceased and things we thought were okay. And I said, well, I could go for a couple of months. I talked to my wife and we said that was okay. And I thought, great opportunity. But then they started bombing civilians in the world, the UN building. And I said, okay, I'm pulling my name off. There are opportunities for me out there. And I look at them. I'm looking for the right opportunity. But there are lots of opportunities within AID. I could either go out as a foreign service officer, or I could do what they call a personal services contract, where anyone off the street who applies for the position could become a contractor to work in the aid mission out in country X. And those are the types of positions that I could see myself doing. And then truckloads of opportunities with our implementing partners. USAID does virtually no development. We are a management agency. We are a procurement agency. We decide what needs to be done, and then we hire contractors to do that. And because of some restrictions, the Buy America clause, our contracts are with American organizations. They, in turn, set up offices in the countries and subcontract all the local NGOs and the local organizations to do it. So there are some inefficiencies of costs as well as some efficiencies as well. But any other questions? Yeah, in the back, peanut gallery.
I was just wondering what some of the things that USAID is able to do in those hot spots like Iraq or Afghanistan or even in Sudan.
Well, we don't. Sudan, I can't tell you enough. My colleague that I work with is really watching Sudan. She could talk for days and days. I can tell you, for example, Yemen. I'm heading out there in January. Let me get my dates right. We have particularly targeted to work in the 5 most problematic governorates for our health programs. And this is one of the coordination issues of diplomacy and winning hearts and minds and the global war on terror type of thing. Our programs were being threatened. Our health program was going to be wiped out last year, 2 years ago, because budget constraints were out there and everyone said, well, if we don't get this level, we're going to have to cut our education, we're going to have to cut our health. And we're like, what, are you insane? You're going to put all of this money towards military and border patrols and things like that and training of officers. We had strategically chosen these regions to set up primary health care for both reproductive family planning and maternal and child health care to these rural areas where there was a lot of tribal, cross-tribal and intra-tribal fighting. And the neat thing is what we are able to do in health, other people can't do under democracy and governance projects. We can create polio campaigns that bring people, that stop civil war for a day for people to get immunized. We work with religious leaders, particularly in the Middle East and in some of the Muslim countries like Indonesia. We work very closely with religious leaders to get them to buy into health, family planning, or maternal health and things like that, and to promote that. And so we're very much able to work in some of these areas. Some of the hotter spots, we no longer manage any of our health programs in Iraq. There was a lot of politics behind that, but we work very much so in Afghanistan. Are they shot at? Yes. And are contractors in Yemen shot at? Yes. It's not easy. And one of the most difficult things is in Iraq, for example, is our foreign service nationals, those Iraqis who are working within the U.S. government mission, the USAID mission, to help manage programs and to provide that insight and things like that. They have to do so at threat of life, because for them to collaborate is very difficult. So if certain people in the neighborhoods or distant relatives found out that they worked with USAID, it'd be very tough for them. But are we able to work in some of these areas? Yeah. Is it easy? Absolutely not. When I go to Yemen, it depends. We've been under very strict you're in your house or you're at the mission because of some security issues and things like that. So we do what we can. Sometimes things get frozen. But amazingly, our contractors in those local NGOs they're the ones who do the yeoman's work.